Hi, I'm Brittany. About 6 years ago, I became a plant mom. As somebody with a green thumb, I am here admitting to you that I have killed several plants. And when I say several, it's probably like hundreds of plants, but not hundreds, somewhere in between several and hundreds are plants that I've killed. And it's not like I'm just out here trying to kill these plants. I'm not just like pouring capfuls of bleach in their soil. No, like I'm trying to care for them properly. But sometimes plants just don't work. You know, I have owned plants that worked well in other settings, you know, and when I move house, they don't acclimate well. I have owned plants that live in my office, you know, and then when I leave that place of employment and bring that plant back home, it doesn't like the lighting conditions or the lack of humidity in my home, or it doesn't like the fact that I run a heater in the wintertime. So all of these things are reasons why some of my plants have been failures for me. If you're a new plant parent, it can be really discouraging to decide that you want to go down this path of plant parenthood, buy a plant, get really inspired by what you see on social media, and then bring a plant home and it immediately dies. Does that mean that you're a terrible person? Probably. No, I'm joking. I'm just joking. You're not a terrible person. Unless you are, then that's none of my business. But it could also mean that the plant is just not happy in your environment. I am currently responsible for a bunch of plants. Here are a few of them. A few of them are behind me. Here's one of them over to the side. This one is a little sickly, which is why only his good leaf is showing right now. I'll just cover him with my shoulder. We'll just pretend like you don't see his ailments. But here are a few of my plants. And even as I was bringing these plants over here to display for this cute background, I noticed that there was one plant that had mold in it. So I've got to deal with that in a couple of days, because if I'm being honest, I don't feel like dealing with it right now. So maybe I am a terrible plant parent. And while most of them are doing very well or okay, a few of them are hanging on by a thread, preparing to make their way to glory. I'm not happy about this, but the reality is I don't know how to take care of every plant that I own. I know how to take care of most of them relatively well, and most of them are thriving, but there are a few that are not. I am going to humble myself on this internet and show you a few of my struggle plants. And this is so that you don't feel bad if you kill plants. It happens, you kill a plant, hopefully you didn't pay too much money for it. Sometimes I think a plant is on its last leg and I put it outside, partially to ignore it so that I don't have to like see it actively dying in front of me. And then I go outside a few days later and it's thriving. Who knew all it needed was some fresh air and sunshine? The first plant is this string of pearls. Now I know how to take care of string of pearls plants. I have several string of pearls that I will be showing in a different video. But this sad looking pot here is just my struggle string of pearls. I don't even know, I don't know what to say about this other than I need to go ahead and put it out of its misery. But I get excited because this one, you know, you can kind of see there's one tiny little pearl that looks like it has a little bit of life, but there are also some pearl skeletons in here as well. So you might be wondering how this plant got to this state. The pearl plants are very easy to propagate, for me at least, but you have to be intentional about how you're watering them and even giving them a bit more humidity as you're propagating them so that their root system can develop. And this one was just a pot full of clippings that I had from a mother plant that was on her way out. And by on her way out, I mean she was dying. So the reality is I started with clippings that were not the healthiest, but I also did not properly care for the clippings once I put them in the soil. And I'll have another video of how I propagate my string of pearl plants so that you all can see what that process is like, or what my process is for doing so. I would have kept the soil damp and then put a plastic wrap or something to create some humidity inside of this pot, and I didn't do that. I put the clippings inside of the dirt, pressed them down a little bit, and then just set this plant under a grow light, and I neglected it. I didn't look at it for a while. So this was my bad. This plant is not doing well because that was my bad. And then I was not watering it consistently for it to be under concentrated light. But this is one of the plants that is pretty much on its way out the door for me. And by out the door, I mean death. The next plant is one of my favorites to look at. I saw this plant and I said to myself, I have to have it. It is one of those plants that I'm a fan of hanging basket plants, you know, plants that cascade, that vine, the string plants, because they don't take up a lot of floor space. But there are a couple of plants that I will sacrifice real estate for, right? Like real estate as in the space where the plant will live, that I know grow out instead of up or instead of down. This is one of those plants. I wanted this plant to become a gigantic tropical monster, and I was going to be okay with it. But instead, this happened. So this is, if you're not familiar with this plant, this is called a Calathea orbifolia. And I don't know who I thought I was fooling when I got this plant. And the reason I got this plant was because I had another plant, a smaller Calathea orbifolia that I had purchased from an online plant retailer. And it got here, it was in perfect health, and I proceeded to kill it. Not intentionally, I planted it. It was a bare root clipping, and I planted it right away. And my home just does not have enough humidity. Calatheas are very finicky if you don't have a lot of humidity. They love humidity. And even if my bathroom, you know, my bathroom has a southern facing window, so that would actually be ideal for plants, but the window is tiny, and I'm not just like, the window is covered, you know, I'm not leaving myself exposed for the sake of a plant in the bathroom. If I had a larger bathroom and there was more, you know, real estate for me to work with, then like maybe that would be a better situation for my tropical plants like Calatheas that love a lot of humidity. But I don't have a lot of humidity in my home, and honestly, I don't want a lot of humidity in my home. It would just be uncomfortable. My hair would always be fried, and this plant just isn't happy. If plant protective services was a thing, I would have been thrown in jail. Look at what I did to this plant. And I say look at what I did to this plant because this summer I said to myself, it's pretty humid. It gets pretty humid where I live in the warmer months. And I said to myself, you know what? This Calathea is on its last leg. And it actually didn't even look as bad as it looks now. Like, it's got this gangsta lean right now. It didn't have that before. At least all of the leaves were like up. They were, wow. Did you see that one? Just lifeless. Oh, he wants to die. Oh man. I thought I could take care of it. You know, like this is an example of just me not knowing how to take care of a plant. This is neglect. This plant could have been okay, but I just neglected her. I planted it and then left it to dry out and then never looked at it again. And then I was like, oh, it's pretty much dead. Okay. Whereas this one, I really wanted it to do well. This plant I put outside during the summer because I wanted to, I don't know, give it some fresh air. I thought it was a child or something, and I was like, let me just put it outside to play. But that's because I've put other plants that were about to die outside, and then they make some miraculous recovery. They get a little rainwater, and then they grow all these leaves, and they look healthy. So I just thought like this plant just needs to be outside. With the homies, I put it on the front porch. And the front porch doesn't get a ton of sunlight, but it was enough sunlight to burn the leaves to a crisp. Like, look at this. What is this? How sad is that? Poor little plant. So I think I may just, as much as I don't want to, I may just cut the rest of these leaves off and then see if that will help it. I also repotted it into this, probably not the best pot recently, because I don't know, I just don't know what to do for this calathea. So if you know how to take care of a calathea that looks like this, please leave me a comment and let me know what I should be doing. I put it in, I know because it loves humidity, but I didn't want the roots to rot. I put it in pretty well draining soil, and I'm wondering if it's too well draining and if I just need another pot for it. I don't want to keep switching it out because that can be really traumatic for the plant as well. I mean, it's got terrible sunburn. I changed it, and then I'm also not giving it distilled water. Like I think calatheas in general prefer distilled water, but the way my pockets is set up, they getting it out the tap. If I'm being honest, like I'm just not going to be feeding this plant distilled water all the time, you know? And even when I wasn't, before I put it outside, it still looked okay. I think when you give it distilled water, it prevents the plant from getting the crispy edges. Like, this is dramatic. This is sunburn, you know, but before it would just get a little crispy around the edges, but it looked like a healthy leaf still. And I think the crisp around the edge was just because of the minerals in the tap water, which is why distilled water is preferred for these types of plants. But I really, really like this plant. I really want to be a successful Calathea herbifolia plant mom. And I don't know if maybe it just ain't for me. Like, I don't know what to do. But we're gonna see. We're gonna try to rehab this plant. This is actually a plant that I would like to keep, and I would like to, you know, rehab her to the point where she is like beautiful and lush and it's got these giant leaves. The last plant that I want to show you, like the pearl plant, that was neglect. The herbifolia, like I don't know how to take care of that one. But this one, I don't know what went wrong. I really don't. And it was just like one day I looked at it, it was fine. And the next day it was not doing okay. It was not okay. And let me just show you. Y'all, this is not how this cactus is supposed to look. Do you see it? Do you see how it's all leaned over and skinny in the middle and brown? It shouldn't be that way. This is not what a cactus is supposed to look like. This cactus was standing up tall. I had this chopstick here. This is a wooden chopstick. I had it there because the cactus was so tall that it was starting to lean over, and you know, I wanted something that could support it behind it. And then I looked one day and it had this lean, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I said to myself, you know, if this cactus dies, it just dies. Like, this is not one that I want to bring back to life. I don't even know how I would bring this plant back to life. I've thought about like literally laying it on the cutting board and chopping the top, like the very top of it, which is the bottom now because it's like his head is on the ground, but chopping the bottom of the plant to see if I could like then place him in soil. I just don't know what to do with it right now. It's just really sad. And it makes me sad looking at this cactus because, I mean, if you don't know what a cactus is supposed to look like, then maybe looking at this plant doesn't bother you, but this is just so extreme. It's so extreme and it happened so suddenly, and I don't know what happened to it. And it's just disappointing. So I hope you enjoyed seeing my plant failures. The purpose of this video was really just a reminder to people who are interested in becoming plant parents or current plant parents. This stuff happens. I am a plant enthusiast. I have a green thumb and I'm not new to this. You know what I mean? Like, I know how to take care of plants, and yet sometimes my plants die. So don't be so hard on yourselves if you get a plant and it dies, you overwater it or you underwater it. It really takes a lot of trial and error. Preferably, it will be trial and error with inexpensive plants or with plants that you didn't purchase yourself. You know, maybe they were gifted plants. Not to say that it wouldn't make you feel bad if those die, but if you think killing a free plant feels bad, spend some real money on a plant. I am a plant collector, and I've spent some money on some plants. And when those die, There is a lot of trial and error in being a plant parent, but stay encouraged and know that there are lots of resources on the internet for free that can help you care for your plants. And even if you don't want to invest in things like humidifiers or grow lights, there are still ways that you can care for plants in your home. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the like button and let me know if you've ever killed a plant.